I'd like to welcome you. If I got an audio there. I'd like to welcome you to the continuation of the celebration of the inauguration of Reginald DesRoches. For those of you who were not here before, my name is John Hutchinson. I'm a professor of chemistry here at Rice. On behalf of the James Baker Institute for Public Policy, we are honored today to welcome to Rice the director of the National Science Foundation, Dr. Sethuraman Panchanathan. It's my pleasure to introduce, for the introduction of Dr. Panchanathan, the new director of the Baker Institute, the Honorable David M. Satterfield. Ambassador Satterfield directs the Baker Institute, and he also leads the Institute's Edward P. Jerigian Center for the Middle East. He has more than 4 decades of experience of diplomatic and leadership, including service as a special envoy to the Horn of Africa, the Assistant Secretary of State, the National Security Council Staff Director, and an ambassador to Lebanon and Turkey, and chargé d'affaires in Iraq and Egypt. Mr. Satterfield's extensive bilateral and multinational negotiating background includes the 1995 Roadmap for Israeli-Palestinian Peace, the 2000 withdrawal of the Israeli Defense Forces from Lebanon, the 2008 Status of Force Agreements between the U.S. and Iraq, and as the State Department's coordinator for Iraq, he managed the largest domestic staff in the department's history, and he directed fundamental reforms to the Foreign Service. Among other honors, Ambassador Satterfield is the recipient of the highest Department of State recognition, the Secretary of State Distinguished Service Award, and the highest award for senior federal executives, the Office of Personnel Management's Distinguished Federal Executive Rank Award. So please welcome to the podium Ambassador David Satterfield, who will introduce Director Panchanathan.
Thank you, John, and thank all of you for coming today. And of course, we welcome Director Panchanathan here to Rice University, as I've had the pleasure of introducing him to the Baker Institute. The role of the National Science Foundation is extraordinary. Like Rice, like the Baker Institute, it engages in many different activities in direction of policy, in providing support for the evolution of, very broadly speaking, science, technology, and not just in those classic areas of so-called hard sciences, but also in areas of the arts and humanities. It is a role which is vital and has been in the United States, but is one that's particularly critical now. And I invite Director Panchanathan to discuss with you the scope of the strategic direction of the National Science Foundation, where it is, where it's going, how it balances pure research, curiosity-driven research, and market applications, so-called translation of research from bench to market. These are critical issues for the United States. They're critical issues for all citizens of this country, both here in Houston, in Texas, but everywhere. And that's another part of the mission of the NSF. How do we provide the kinds of education, training, opportunities, incentives for all Americans everywhere to play a role in the increasingly science and tech-focused world, not just of tomorrow, but of today? But I will let Dr. Panchanathan speak to that. Director, podium is yours, and thank you again for coming.
Thank you, Ambassador Satterfield. It's great to be here. I want to first take a moment to join with you all in celebrating the wonderful inauguration of President DesRoches. I mean, a phenomenal person. I had the opportunity of meeting him this morning, a great visionary. I think amazing things are going to happen, not only because the president is here, he has been here in different roles, but the fact that he has a team. And I had a chance to meet with the Provost, the Vice President of Research, as well as the Vice President of Innovation, and a host of other folks. So this team, I think, is going to do amazing things. I can already see it with their energy, the enthusiasm, the ideas, and their commitment to wanting to make sure that Rice advances to amazing futures and building on the amazing work that you've already done here. I would be remiss if I didn't say thanks to my dear friend, and Dr. Neil Lane. Many of you may know him here. Neil is here. And yes. I tell you, we all owe a debt of gratitude to Neil for the amazing work that he did on behalf of our nation as science advisor to President Clinton and served in the National Science Foundation as a director. I can say from personal experience, that's not an easy job. I can attest to that. And for the amazing work that he has done post all of that. He continues to be a strong advocate for science. And one of the great things about Neil is he does it with so much poise and humility, and most importantly, is respected on both sides of the aisle in Washington. When Neil speaks, people listen. That's how I say it. So Neil, thank you, sir, for inviting me, and thanks for all that you do every day. Thank you so much. So I thought about what I might discuss here, and it occurred to me that the moment of this inauguration and seeing the unbelievable vision of what's being laid out for the future and building on the amazing past, it sort of is reminiscent of what we are doing at NSF, if you may want to think of it that way as a parallel. So when I came to NSF 2 years ago, I had served in the National Science Board. President Obama appointed me to the board in 2014, and I served 6 years, and then President Trump appointed me to this role and got unanimous confirmation, so nobody can nail me with anything. So I just want to be very clear about that. I am a scientist, and I am serving the scientific community, and I'm delighted to do that because of the trust that is placed by all presidents as well as others, and so I'm happy to serve. And so with that, I just wanted to talk about this topic that I'm deeply passionate about, which is innovation anywhere, opportunities everywhere, and how do we unleash that future through what NSF can do, must do, and will do over the next several decades, if not definitely the next few years, in advancing to those futures. So before I get too far with this, some of you may already be familiar with the amazing mission of NSF. This mission was laid out by none other than Vannevar Bush when he wrote Science, the Endless Frontier to President Roosevelt in 1945, coming out of World War II. He laid out this amazing mission for NSF. And that mission, in this day and age, where a new leader comes and a new mission, a new vision, and new goals, new this, new that, 72 years later, this mission still holds true for the National Science Foundation, and I would not change a word of it. Because it is still a vision that we are aspiring for, and still a vision that we are hopeful that we will get together, all of us, at speed and scale. So the promoting the progress of science, advancing national health, prosperity, and welfare, and securing the national defense. Just to put that in perspective, when I came to NSF, we said, how might we articulate what NSF has been doing and what it needs to do as it goes into the future? And I thought that one way of articulating that would be these 3 pillars. The first pillar is, how do we advance the frontiers of research, science, technology, engineering into the future? And NSF has been doing that for the last 7 decades. So what is new about that? What is new about that? That this moment is challenging us to strengthen at speed and scale. So what is so special about this moment? What is special about this moment other than the fact that we are coming out of the COVID pandemic? What is special about this moment, I say, are 3 things. Number 1, we have never seen global competition like what we are seeing today. And global competition is a good thing. Since when has competition been anything other than not about the competitor, but about us looking inward and asking, how can we be more excellent? How can we deliver better for our citizens? This moment of competition is therefore challenging us, motivating us, inspiring us to do better, more, faster. At the same time as the global competition is upon us, the other factor that I find is while we have advanced as a nation, unleashing amazing amount of science, technology, engineering, prosperity, we have left behind a lot of talent and ideas. We still are leaving behind a lot of talent and ideas. Lot of talent and ideas across the broad geography of our nation. Lot of talent and ideas across the broad socioeconomic demographic of our nation. Lot of ideas and talent across the broad diversity of our nation. This cannot, must not and should not continue, because if we want to really unleash the prosperity of our nation for all, and therefore we might speed up progress, we need to bring out every bit of talent. I call them the missing millions. The missing millions of talent has to be energized, inspired, motivated, and brought to life. The third point that characterizes this moment is very important. It's very important to the earlier point I made about my nomination, etc. I want to be very serious about this. I have walked the corridors through my confirmation process. I have engaged with congressmen, women, and senators before my confirmation, and every day almost, or every week almost after my confirmation, particularly with the CHIPS and Science Act over the last 2 years. I can tell you with no doubt at all that science is fully supported in a bipartisan manner. I have not heard anybody who has said to me that let's not worry about science, or this is not the moment for science. Everybody agrees. We may talk about how to do it, where to do it, but it is not about whether we should do it or not, that we need to advance science, technology, engineering, and more for the advancement of our nation into the future. So we have total bipartisan support. So with these three characteristics that define this nation at this moment, with many other things, I can tell you with certainty that NSF is going to make sure that we make this progress through all of your work. I always say NSF is only a catalyst, an enabler at best. The real work happens here, and that's why I'm traversing all across the country to make sure that I go to the places where actual work happens. Listen to people so that NSF might serve you better. NSF might serve you better. So, the first pillar, advancing the frontiers of research into the future, is therefore about strengthening at speed and scale. The middle pillar, literally the central pillar, is exceedingly important. We talked about that. How do we advance to those futures with accessibility and inclusivity as part of how we advance into those amazing futures? And the third thing, which always comes about as a question wherever I go, is, have we abandoned the idea of working globally? It's quite the opposite. When we talk about securing global leadership, it is not a unilateral ambition or aspiration. That global leadership is not about one country being a leader and other being followers. That global leadership is a shared imperative of nations who share values and who share aspirations. How might we work together? I can tell you, just in the last few days, I had the heads of delegation from Ireland, heads of delegation from Switzerland, minister from India on a Sunday. Just in the last 5 days. This is a constant kind of engagement that all our nations that share our values are constantly engaging with NSFN, so that we might unleash that prosperity everywhere with the shared aspiration and shared values. And what are those shared values? The shared values of openness, transparency, reciprocity, research integrity, respect for intellectual property, and a whole lot more of those kinds of values, scientific values that binds us all together. And in doing so, that the foundation of all of that is not that all of this will be made possible just by NSF alone. Clearly not. That we will hyper-partner with every other agency inside our agency itself, starting with that. Partner with industry, partner with economic development ecosystems, partner with K-12, partner with community colleges, partner with universities, and partner with entrepreneurial ecosystems, partner with foundations, partner with international partners, and more. That this partnership mindset is how we are going to actually be able to unleash the possibilities. Not by just only looking at NSF and its budget and its programs as the only methodology of getting there. That won't be enough. That is necessary but not sufficient. And that when we are doing this, that we are looking at everything that we do through this lens of innovation. I tell the folks at NSF, if we are not innovative as an agency, how can we be responsible for unleashing innovation all across the nation? Let's start with innovation right here at home, thinking about how we do our work, how we configure our programs, how we move forward. So if you look at the three major priorities of NSF, therefore, moving forward, is strengthening established NSF, inspiring the missing millions, and of course ensuring that we are delivering benefits through accelerating technology and innovation as these three main ways in which we are going to advance into those futures. When I came to NSF, I know that people attribute NSF to all the fantastic fundamental research, exploration, and successes. If there is a black hole discovery just happened a few weeks ago in our own galaxy, the Sagittarius A star, people would immediately say, of course it is NSF. If you look at any of the Nobel laureates that even happened just a week and a half ago, almost every one of them were touched by NSF in one form or the other in their career. But that's not the only thing that NSF makes possible. If you look at the left-hand side of curiosity-driven, discovery-based explorations as one of those things that NSF unleashes and known for, so does NSF also make possible use-inspired, solutions-focused translations or innovations. And so when it came to NSF, I said, how do I express this? I thought the best way of expressing it is the DNA. The DNA of NSF has got two strands. One strand is that curiosity-driven explorations. The other strand is the use-inspired translations or innovations, and that they are highly symbiotic and synergistic. Explorations make possible innovations, we all know that. But little credit sometimes is given to the fact that those translations and innovations demand and make possible further explorations. And this rich symbiosis is very, very important, and that is what NSF is about. That's what NSF should be about into the future also, more of, and that's the DNA of NSF. Let's talk about the black hole. This black hole discovery would not have been possible. I mean, let's take an example of Katie Bowman. Katie Bowman was part of this computational telescope thinking that she built as a computer science PhD and a postdoc at MIT. Let's take the journey of Katie, for example. Katie was a high school student and engaged in research projects at Purdue University. As an undergraduate student, was engaged in undergraduate research projects at the University of Michigan. Won the Graduate Research Fellowship of NSF, went on to pursue her PhD at MIT, and then did her postdoc at MIT, and then now has the Career Award from NSF at Caltech and pursuing her work, and responsible for this as one of the members of the team. Clearly, this took a lot more than just Katie. It took 300 researchers with using 8 different telescopes from 80 different institutions to come together in order to find this unbelievable discovery. And that it required all these other things in terms of computational resources that had to be brought to bear so that we might, and the importance of, therefore, infrastructure, not only telescope investments, but also high-performance computing and other investments that NSF makes in order to unleash these kinds of unbelievable discoveries and make them possible. So it's about the people, as well as about the infrastructure, of course, the ideas, and what makes it all possible, these discoveries. So the curiosity-driven research, let's take an example right here at Rice University. We have many, many career award winners from Rice University, as you know, and you celebrate them. You celebrate them, rightly so. So the curiosity-driven research is also made possible by amazing centers right here at Rice, the Center for Theoretical Biological Physics. I was there this morning at ION, and I saw one of the amazing things that they were doing as part of that center activity. To see that the Center for Theoretical Biological Physics would have use-inspired, solutions-focused translations is indeed heartwarming. And there are thousands and thousands of examples like that, if only we will take some moments to go and understand that and appreciate that. So this is one of the 10 physics frontier centers from NSF. 11 senior investigators involved in this, and major research activities captured here. I'm not trying to read them. I know you can do a better job than me. And in the interest of time, we'll keep it brief. These kind of centers, NSF makes possible these center conceptualizations in addition to the individual research awards that we make to faculty members or in all disciplines, engineering research centers, science and technology centers, physics frontier centers, chemistry innovation centers, material science engineering research centers, MERSECs, and a whole lot more of those center activity. Right now we have about 60 or 70 of them all across our nation. Working away in terms of taking solution-oriented thinking and finding the fundamental research that is needed to be done, and through which we not only train the next generation of scientists and engineers for the future, but also through working with industry, finding how we might translate technologies for the benefit of industry and building new entrepreneurial ecosystems. So whether it's the Engineering Research Center, like the Newt Research Center I just visited with, nanotechnology-enabled water treatment center, which is in the 8th year of funding as an engineering research center. The institution that I came from was a partner of the center. I was aware of this right from day one in terms of what it does, in terms of providing clean water. And the amazing work that happens at the nanotechnology level to make this possible. And this again is a consortium of universities, as you can see, UT El Paso being a partner too in this consortium. Or if you take a science and technology center, which was recently released, the 4 science and technology centers that were released in terms of the competition, the Coldex Center, literally drilling in Antarctica, an ice column, and from that column being able to understand the climate effects over several hundreds of years, understanding what happened at each point in time, which are essentially captured in this ice block drilled all the way down in the Antarctic. These kinds of work is what NSF makes possible, bringing together transdisciplinary scientists from across the nation, from academic institutions, industry, and other entities, labs, and others, so that we might make these explorations possible. And there are many, many of them. When it came to NSF, we were just about to release the solicitation for AI institutes. And I said we need to rename the AI Institute initiative to AI in every state. It's got to be inspiring AI thinking in every part of our country. It may not be all research at the highest level of intensity. It can be a K-12 inspiration. It can be a community college inspiration. It can be an industry inspiration or entrepreneurial inspiration. It doesn't matter. The fact that we have the intention and the intentionality to make sure that AI will be unleashed everywhere in different contexts, in different ways, is an important thinking. Of course, at the end of the day, what happens is through the gold standard merit review process that we will find the best ideas and fund them. But there is the intent and the interest to want to make sure that we partner with as many people as possible. And in the first iteration, the other thing that we said, we had $100 million for this competition for 5 centers, $20 million each. I said, we have to go and scale this up. In year 1, we got, of all the partners, US Department of Agriculture. USDA invested in 2 centers for $40 million scale, fully funded by USDA, and we ran the competition. And those 2 centers, AI centers, one in the University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, which I visited, is focused on how do we build these futures for smart agriculture. That we will take the context of every possible way in which we can advance new ideas and new solutions. And that in the first round, we had Department of Transportation, Department of Homeland Security, USDA as partners. In the second round, I said we should challenge ourselves even more. In the first round, we have 20 states participating through various partnerships, including John Deere as a company and many other companies. And institutions like Tuskegee University, a historically black college and university. In the second round, we challenged ourselves and said with the 5 that we will fund again, we got 6 more partners this time, even a consortium of industry partners, Intel, Amazon, Accenture, and Google, all working together to invest $20 million scale so that we might unleash newer ideas of AI, core AI ideas, as well as ideas of AI having impact on learning or weather or whatever the agriculture or whatever the context might be that we want to advance. So in the second round, when we are finished with 11 plus 7, 18 institutes, we span 40 states and the District of Columbia. And in the third round, which we will release the results very soon, I'm confident that we will touch many parts of our nation, if not all. And that's the thinking of intentionality to make sure that we are working hard at NSF to not talk about how we need to include everybody, but actually make it possible. And you're going to hear other programs that we are configuring to see how we can help people unleash their ideas. Let's talk about quantum. Quantum. In quantum, we worked again with Department of Energy in terms of unleashing these 5 quantum institutes, national quantum institutes, working on various aspects of quantum, whether it is materials or devices or interconnects or computational ideas, all of them. And right here, I'm going to come to that, there is a faculty member who's working to contribute towards the quantum computation kind of thinking. But before I get to that, we also invested in quantum foundries. How might a 5th grader in rural Montana get excited by the quantum excitement through a quantum foundry that provides access to STEM inspiration and STEM spark? And these quantum foundries, 2 of them, one is in University of California, Santa Barbara. The other one is between University of Montana and University of Arkansas called Monarch Foundry. So these foundries are not in the typical places only, Nothing wrong with that. But we have to make sure that we are ensuring, and you will keep hearing this message from me, reiterated again and again and again. And this is, by the way, I was in IBM Yorktown, and this is a 127 qubit computer. I was just fascinated by that, so I had to put that picture up. So right here, your own faculty, Guido Pagano, who won the Career Award, is actually exploring a way to make sure that he understands this quantum entanglement to contribute towards the quantum computation or quantum computing. When we talk about STEM, because I was given only 25 minutes, I'm trying to speed up and say fewer things, so I'm just going to, you have to bear with me. I'm trying to speak fast. I'm taking advantage of my mother tongue here. So these STEM pathways, this thinking that STEM is not a pipeline, but a STEM is a pathway, that people can come in and go out and come back in and go out and come back in. That's the way in which we need to think about STEM, and not think about STEM as it's from K to 12, they have to go to university, they have to go to graduate school, they have to go to industry. That's not the only pathway or the part of the pipeline. So there are many, many, many pathways. So how do we energize the multiple pathways? And here I was asked to share my own story, and therefore I thought that I should try to compress that too. So I start always as a proud grandfather with my granddaughter. It's cheap publicity. So my granddaughter Anya, she's 2 years old. I watch her intently. I'm looking at her, exploring away, touching, learning, seeing things. We are all explorers. We are all explorers. That's how our journey gets started. We are all explorers. So I watch her exploring away. And my own STEM spark happened, because I was asked to talk about my story. My own STEM spark started when I was 8 years old. My father was a professor in astronomy and astrophysics. He took me to the US consulate in Chennai. I was 8 years old. You can age me. And so the moon rocks had come back, and they were retrieved by the mission to the moon, and they were circulated all over the globe, including the US consulate in Chennai. And so I stood in a long line in front of the US consulate, went inside. I vividly remember this like yesterday. My father took me there. I saw this moon rock, and I'm like, it's a rock. But it is more than a rock. What it took to get that rock is something that's phenomenal. Just think about it for a moment. Somebody decided to build a device, go in it, explore away, bring the rock back, and then the United States did something even more fantastic. I told the consulate general in Chennai when I was visiting a couple of months ago that this is an amazing thing that the US did. And it inspired, and I was talking to the finance minister, and she said, oh, you too, I got inspired by that too. What I'm trying to say is that we have a responsibility to inspire and ignite the STEM spark in as many children, particularly from the non-traditional K-12 institutions, particularly inner city schools. We have a responsibility to do that. And then that took me to a journey that we won't go into all parts, but the next moment where I had a wake-up call was, you might call it a midlife crisis. I was getting close to 40 years of age. And then I said, I really want to do something where computing and all the work that I've done in multimedia and image and all of that stuff, I want to see if I can actually tangibly impact humanity. So I was having this discussion with a group of my colleagues in terms of putting a proposal together to none other than NSF, ITR program. As we were thinking about this, a thought from one of my colleagues came, why not work with individuals who are blind and visually impaired? It was almost antithetical, because image processing is for people who can see images. Now we are working for people who cannot see images. And so, but yet it seemed so right. And without getting into the details, on the Center for Cognitive Ubiquitous Computing, I want to talk about this story, because this is important to remember how much we can impact an undergraduate student. This is David Hayden. David Hayden was a visually impaired student, and he could see only things at this distance. Legally blind. So he walked into my office, he knocked, Dr. Panch, I want to talk to you. I said, what is it about? I see that you have a center for individuals who are blind and visually impaired. You're designing devices, technologies for assisting individuals who are blind and visually impaired. I'm a double major in computer science and math. I'm in the freshman year, I'm already struggling. I'm not able to keep up with the courses. I sit in the very first row, and I'm not able to see what is going on. And I'm trying to pay close attention, but things are moving from step 1 to step N on both programming as well as in mathematical proofs. I'm finding it harder to follow. I'm an A+ student from high school. I cannot not be that as I go through my journeys. So he was compelled. So he came and said, do you have a gadget for me that will help me? I said, I don't have a gadget to give you, David, but I can tell you this. If you come into my lab, in my center, and you work with not only me, my postdocs, my PhD students, master's students, other undergraduate research students, and even high school students in my lab, maybe you will figure out a solution for not only you, but also others. He took my challenge. This is the end of freshman year. He comes in. He builds this amazing device, a laptop, USB connected in those days, early 2000s, USB connected, handheld, pan-tilt zoom camera. He controls the camera. The lecture that was not accessible to him, he brings it through the camera into his tablet PC. He splits this PC into two logical halves. One half is all the video of the lecture coming in. Right half, he constructs a notes interface. He freezes frames. He forms video clips, makes this unbelievable set of notes, all within a semester in the sophomore year. And then he comes and tells me, Dr. Panch, I've got this device now. I want to give it to other visually impaired students. Can you make more copies of this? I said, no problem, we do it. So he said, I want to get their feedback and see if I can improve this device. Sophomore, second year. And his classmates, cited classmates, came to him and said, David, you've got the best course notes in the class. Can you please share it with us? And on to the junior year. He keeps on innovating. He has hotkeys and this and that and all the software. What better way of learning computer science than actually programming your device? At the end of the third year, junior year, there was a competition of the Microsoft Imagine World Cup, where ideas from all institutions at the undergraduate, graduate level are being submitted for under 12 categories, one of the most touch and tablet category. So he says, can I go and submit this prototype that I have built? I said, absolutely, go forward. He was working with a team of students. My lab had people from design school, bioengineering, you name it, accessible education, all of those people working in the lab as part of the NSF iGood program. So now he has this unbelievable device now. He submits to the Microsoft Imagine Cup competition. He wins the regional competition, beats Berkeley, Ramesh, and Stanford and others. And then, and then he goes on to go to the national competition, beats MIT and others, goes to the world competition in Poland, 325,000 entries in the world competition under these 11 categories. He called me from Poland and said, Dr. Panch, I won the world competition. This is about the creativity, the grit, the tenacity, the unbelievable intellect, the hard work ethic, and the can-do spirit. And I can go on talking about this guy. Got that done. And then he built this into a much better prototype in the fourth year, went to the software design category competition, won the national competition again, and then went on to pursue his PhD at MIT. And spun out a company so that he can manufacture that for other folks too. The reason I say this is an undergraduate student with a problem, seemingly, can unleash this level of innovation, which means our undergraduate students, community college students, high school students have so much to offer. It is upon us to see how we can inspire them at scale. So I challenge every one of us. What can we do to rethink, rewire ourselves so that we can make such possibilities happen? Because our nation needs this, folks. Our nation needs this at speed and scale. I'm not going to talk about this example because it's another example of a program that I put together inspired by this at the university level. Unbelievable ideas being built together. If you have a question, I'll answer it with that example. I'm planting a question. Okay. So that's what we want to do at NSF, is how might we then create innovation anywhere and opportunities everywhere? Because we know that it is possible. And so one of the things that we are doing at NSF when I came in is to see how we can not only advance the unbelievable scientific work. I want to be very clear about this. There is absolutely no diluting, walking away, or lessening the focus on fundamental basic research. It is going to be expanded, grown. None of that is going to be compromised. I want to make this very, very clear because people tend to hear what they want to hear, and I want to be very clear. Okay? However, on top of that, what we want to do is to see how we can take the amazing discoveries and inventions that is happening in all these unbelievable areas, mathematical, physical sciences, geosciences, biosciences, computer information science and engineering, STEM education, and a whole lot of those, social behavioral economic sciences. How do we take them and those appropriate things that are ready for translation for societal as well as economic benefits? How we might work with communities, how we might work with industry, how we might work with entrepreneurial ecosystems so that this can become a cross-cutting directorate called Technology Innovation Partnerships, or the TIP directorate, hopefully TIP, the balance in favor of us, and that we launched it within a year, the first new directorate in NSF in 31 years. So that we might deliver the prosperity that we seek to have everywhere and make opportunities possible everywhere. And that, as part of the TIP directorate, a thumbnail of the kinds of things that we're going to be looking at is how do we accelerate public-private partnerships? Here are examples of that. Platforms for advanced wireless. We call it the POWER program. This is 35 companies, leading companies in the wireless area, configured with NSF, pre-wired, with $50 million each, working together in a $100 million program in terms of looking at how do we look at the future of wireless research. At the same time as how do we build resilient networks, we'll come to that next, but also at the same time, working with companies like Intel. When Intel launched the $20 billion fab in Ohio, we said, how might we work with you so that we might unleash the talent that is needed in community colleges, in universities and others, so that we might be able to have the workforce that is needed for the success of Intel. So we have a $100 million partnership with Intel on that front. So that we might pre-wire these partnerships so that we can deliver more, scale more work through those activities. Likewise, the pathways to entrepreneurship. How might we, through I-Core program, the Innovation Core program, that has been very successful at NSF, but I would argue that maybe 5,000 people have been trained in the I-Core program. How do we make it 500,000? How do we have new programs like entrepreneurial fellowships so that undergraduate students, graduate students, and postdocs may have the ability to be able to work in a cohort with all the appropriate resources provided so they might exercise their unbelievable ideas into ventures that are successful? How we might expand and scale on that front. So on the Rise University front on I-Core, Rise University got $15 million just a few weeks ago as we launched the 5 new hubs. So that the initial node that Rice University had with Texas A&M, UT Austin, and others now expanded to include Oklahoma State, Louisiana State, and others, so that we might build a hub and a network of activities around entrepreneurship. How might we scale the SBIR and SCTR, the lab-to-market platforms? I have many, many stories to tell on this. Again, in the interest of time, I will not go into storytelling unless you have a question for me. So this one is an example of a California company. This company, which is Blue River Technologies, is about a lettuce bot, a robot that goes and prunes the lettuce automatically to make sure the maximum yield is provided. How might we take contexts that are very important and deliver the appropriate solutions and technologies? Likewise, in University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, a company called EarthSense. EarthSense senses robots in the field and measures the moisture and measures the nutrient at every local point, so that we might not waste the fertilizer and water, but be very precise about agriculture. Where is it needed and what kind of resource need to be put in place so that we might have better yields. And then a new program called Regional Innovation Engines. When I came to NSF, I said, how might we launch the Bell Lab-like partnerships through public-private partnerships everywhere across our nation around context that is akin to the place-based innovation. Where else would you have the next generation of agriculture like Bell Labs other than a place like the region of Nebraska, Iowa, Indiana, Kansas, and Illinois? As one example, not the only place. How might you do place-based innovation in a way that you can unleash these Bell Lab-like constructs? And how might we help configure ideas through university, industry, economic development ecosystems, all the community colleges, even K-12, entrepreneurial ecosystems, all of them coming together in terms of building these kinds of collaborative activities, and that NSF can start to incubate these kinds of ideas and work very closely with commerce so that these ideas then get to see the real value at the end of the day through the regional technology hubs of commerce so that we might be tightly integrated, so that we can therefore create the jobs of the future, ideas of the future, the wealth of the future, and more importantly, solving the problems of today and tomorrow. And so when you talk about regional innovation engines, I said, let's not wait for what we need to get in terms of resources. Let's see what we can configure. Let's see what ideas are out there. And I'm proud to say in 2 months, when we asked for the concept papers, you look at the number of ideas. Every territory in every state of the United States is represented here, which means ideas are everywhere. And we did something very unique with this. We publicized all of them on the web so that people might know what others are doing. This is not usually done. So that people can see how they can form collaborations and develop macro partnerships. So they can then come up with unbelievable ideas at a regional or beyond regional levels. And so we are in the process of doing this, and I'm hoping to see some really fantastic things incubated through this process. But it's only a first step. We're going to keep at it over several cycles. I talked about access and inclusion. Let me talk about one other program and I will stop. When I came to NSF, I said, how is it that established institutions have the ability to be able to present ideas in a form that achieves the success? Rice University is an excellent example. You punch above your weight. $40 million from NSF last year and other agencies, I'm sure. A tremendous research powerhouse here at Rice. But why is it that Tuskegee University, or why is it that the University of Texas El Paso, or why is it some other research 2 institution or a tribal college, why is it that they are not able to get their ideas to be successful in the gold standard merit review process of NSF? It's not the ideas are bad. It's not the people don't have good ideas. It's a fact that the infrastructure of a research office or whatever that might be that I happen to build at Arizona State University and all of you have here and other institutions, it is not to be taken for granted. So if we don't have the resource to be able to help you with writing a proposal or putting your partnerships together or helping with compliance or pre-award or post-award, you name it, all those things that are required in order for a successful research enterprise to be built, you can't take it for granted. No pun intended, granted is an acronym for growing research access for nationally transformative equity and diversity. If not anything else, we are good at acronyms. That the granted will be a virtual research office that will be available for any institution or an individual, particularly from minority serving institutions and institutions that don't have this resource, so that they too can get their ideas presented in the best quality form that it will transcend the gold standard merit review process and achieve the successes they truly deserve. Why? Because there is an out of proportion share of students of diverse populations going to these institutions. So if you're really serious about diversity, let's not kid ourselves. We need to energize and empower all these institutions to be successful in their research endeavors, in their entrepreneurial endeavors, and more. And so NSF is committed. We are launching this program also within a year. We're already in the process of launching it. We've been designing it over the last 6 to 8 months. So that NSF granted tip and a whole host of other things. I'm not going to go through every one of them. I'm just giving you a small window into NSF and how we are thinking about this in terms of how we address the opportunities for the future. I will simply say the time is now. We have to rewire ourselves. We have to change our thinking. We have to do better for our nation. We have to do better for our regions. This is the time. And there is no time to argue about this. And I want to say that in terms of thinking about NSF, the pillars gone. How do all the directorates have a mutual understanding of what each other is doing, find where synergies might be so that we can all work together? Because the problem of climate is not going to be solved by engineering or science or geosciences or biosciences alone. It's all of them coming together, more importantly, social, behavioral, economic sciences, humanities, and the arts and inspirations, such that we can build comprehensive and real solutions for the challenging problems like climate and others. So that is how we are configuring ourselves. As I said, we need to start, as I said earlier, we need to start at NSF to think about how we might do this in terms of our own directorates with the Office of Integrative Activities, Office of International Science and Engineering, and I can talk about that if you want in terms of what we're doing. I've said that we have to launch global centers in international context, not just only episodic small projects, but macro projects in terms of working with our partners and the technology innovation partnerships that interweaves through everything. So with that, wherever I go, that foundation of partnerships, let's partner. NSF is here to serve you. And let's see how we can deliver what the nation needs and what we all think is the right thing to do. So with that, thank you so much for the opportunity. Sometimes when I get to talk, I take my 50-minute lecture slot sizes as what I am trained to do. And so I might have exceeded my limit of whatever it was. So whatever amount of time we have for questions, let's get with it.
Thank you very much for that extraordinary presentation. And we do have questions for you, of course. And let me summarize several in one single query. Global competition on scientific research and innovation is increasing along with global competition for talent. Recent news reports indicate China is making substantial inroads on all fronts. Are you concerned? Are American universities truly losing ground? I would say the American Research Institute as a whole is at losing ground. Does Americans' government, university, research partnerships still have what it takes to keep us competitive and able to maintain a destination for the world's best and brightest? And as a part of that, what's the position of NSF, if in fact NSF has a position, on taking on students from China, collaborating with counterparts in China?
So let me start with the last point first. NSF's position, as I said very clearly, we will partner with like-minded partners who share our values. So if you share our values of openness, transparency, reciprocity, bring it on. It doesn't matter what the country is. We want to work with them because science is global. Scientific ideas are global. Scientific expertise is global and is needed to be brought in to address global grand challenge problems. So it's as simple as that. I just want to be very clear about one thing. In doing so, we need to make sure that if there are not those shared values, which is becoming the basis of our collaboration, then we need to put appropriate safeguards to make sure that the American taxpayers' investments are appropriately shepherded. And that's a responsibility for us all. And so that's framed very nicely in the research security. Research security is not about doing this. Research security is about how we might, I've told my folks, we need to make sure that people are made aware of what the responsibilities are. How do we train them? How do we work? NSF cannot do these things because the work happens in the academic institutions. We need to partner with you. We need to listen to you in terms of what works and how can we make this work so that we are all building robust research enterprises that is welcoming for people who share our values and aspirations. As simple as that. So there is no slowing down on that. So if you hear anything other, it's your own sort of what you want to draw from it. But I can tell you, we are trying to make sure that people understand there are certain rules of engagement with anything. For even our own grants within the country, there is a lot of compliance that we do, don't we? So this is part of being compliant about certain things that we think are important that we all need to work together on. I hope that addresses it.
Thank you. And the competitiveness question.
Are we losing? So I'm not. So you have to forgive me. I'm an optimist. Okay. So I don't take questions framed in. I don't mean to be your. So if you don't mind, I'll reframe the question in the following way: what does US have to do in order that we stay in the vanguard of competitiveness? Right. I would put it that way. What do we have to do to make sure that we get more talent welcomed here? And I'm a strong proponent of that. In seeing how we can build hyper partnerships, how we can stay ahead of the curve, and with like-minded partners. So I'm always about how to do it right moving forward. And so that's what we are focused on. This presentation is probably a glimpse into that and how we can be welcoming. And so whenever I talk to any legislator, I say, why not this unbelievable talent that we bring to our nation and to get trained in the best possible way, why not give them a chance to exercise their talent here without any impediments? So we're working on it. Everybody is everybody understands that and they're working on it. And I'm working hard to see how we can motivate them to find real solutions to this problem of not losing talent.
Thank you. You've created a new directorate, and I think more importantly, you made the point in our earlier discussion, it's part and parcel of the mission of NSF, technology, innovation, and partnerships, TIP. How will you determine what type of research belongs within this new focus? And will fields that are basic science research, astronomy, astrophysics, evolutionary biology, fit inside this?
Absolutely. Here is what I will say. I don't decide that. It is decided by the people who are engaged in the research. This is a cross-cutting directorate, and I'm very clear. TIP is not about the directorate alone. TIP is a concept that permeates everything that happens in NSF. TIP is such that the success of TIP will only when we are able to leverage those ideas, translate them in partnership. Likewise, more importantly, how do we energize more new ideas? That's TIP. So let me give you an astronomy example. Here I was in Maui just a few weeks ago, inaugurating our the largest solar telescope in the world, DKIST, Daniel K. Inouye, named after the great senator from Hawaii, solar telescope, DKIST. And I will tell you, I asked them, how is it that we cannot take this unbelievable, they were talking about this gazillions amount of data that is going to be coming down, and how we're going to handle this, and how do we make sure that data is going to be looked into, understood, and so on. I said, this is a great opportunity. Shouldn't Hawaii be the place where the telescope is, where you can build the big data companies, so that you attract the big data companies to be right there working with you, so that you create the jobs right there, train the people right there. Right there you have an opportunity. So astronomy can become even better with the fact that this synergy with how do you handle the big data problem in real time, and then feeding back new explorations with their astronomy. How about that? So every discipline, whether it is biotechnology or whatever that is, has got that. On the biotechnology, if I may, I will tell you this story. Okay. So I shared with this in the White House the other day in the bioeconomy roundtable that we had. Here is a story of Jason Kelly. Jason Kelly is the CEO and founder of Ginkgo Bioworks out of Boston. Jason was a graduate student funded by NSF's Graduate Research Fellowship Program in early 2000, Jason Kelly and Reshma Shetty, working with Tom Knight and Drew Endy at MIT. In mid-2000s, NSF funded a research center, Like and Rise. This center was focused on synthetic biological engineering called Sinberg Center, and Jason and Reshma were part of the center too. In 2008, Tom Knight, Jason Kelly, and Reshma co-founded this company called Ginkgo Bioworks. NSF funded that company with an SBIR Phase 1 funding, and then subsequently funded the SBIR Phase 2A and 2B funding. So by the early 2010s, this company already had the prototypes and ready to launch. And with other SBIR funding from other agencies, they quickly built this, where venture capital invested $60 million. Today, it's a $5 billion company out of Boston, Massachusetts, in Kendall Square. This is what NSF makes possible. When we talk about basic bioscience directorate, it may not happen in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. That's not the point. The point is, where appropriate, there is opportunity afforded for people to take those ideas and build them into ventures, build them into open source solutions, further explore away and get Nobel Prizes. All of those are fair game. Nothing is limiting.
I've got a combined final question for you, because you've got another event to do after this, Panch. One has to do with patents.
Yeah.
When NSF incubates research that leads to commercially marketable technologies, and you've cited several examples, highly successful examples of those launches, is there a mission here to ensure the public retains the rights to this technology, in that public money has contributed to it? That's the question. I ask you, how do you answer? How do you respond this balance between public access and incentivization of private, patent-driven, patent-protected technologies?
Let me give you this example of Ginkgo. So we had Jason Kelly and others spinning off the company. Tom Knight was their co-founder. Drew Endy, on the other hand, chose to go to Stanford and build an open source version of that. Both are prospering. There is room for whatever makes sense. Nothing precludes you from having an open source version or making it publicly available. The Bayh-Dole Act, as you all know, provides the universities with the ability to be able to handle the intellectual property. When I was doing the work of the VPR, of innovation and so on, I had this rule. Let's not, hack away at these legal agreements, because 98% of the intellectual property does not see the light at the end of the day most of the time, at the point that you're trying to make this. Let's make it available. Let's go prosper. And then if we get some returns out of that, maybe there's a windfall provision that allows you to get something. Let's not be selfish about it. So we need institutions to determine the policy, because you have the access. NSF does not keep it. In fact, I was asked in one forum, should NSF keep an equity part of these companies? I said, absolutely not. Because the whole idea of federal government investment is to make sure that we are fostering high-risk, high-reward ideas without any expectation in return, because we don't want to mess up that by having some kind of an expectation of return modulating how you invest. You'll become less risk-averse. Federal government's job is to make sure that we invest in high-risk, high-reward ideas.
Thank you. And then the final question. NSF and the issue of climate change, or more broadly, the U.S. national lab system and climate change. Thoughts?
NSF, sorry?
The U.S. National
No, the
Lab,
first part. NSF, you said NSF?
NSF and climate change as an issue, and then the whole lab system. And
I
how
think,
it
I
is.
will tell you, the lab system is fantastic of the Department of Energy. We're blessed to have them. How do we hyper-partner with the labs? There are investigators who have DOE grants, who work with the labs, and investigators in the labs who also have access to NSF grants if they choose to, partner with universities. And this takes, as I say, a whole of village approach, right? It takes a village to get these things sorted out. So how might we work together so that we might find those solutions that are necessary, whether it is climate science, understanding it better, climate mitigation, climate adaptation, climate resilience, and climate technologies. I call it the smart climate. I made it up. Science, mitigation, adaptation, resilience, technologies. How can we be smart about this so that we might unleash the solutions that is necessary, the companies that are necessary? We should be in the vanguard of innovation. Let's hyper-partner and do it. My approach is partner, 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 so that we can co-leverage each other.
Panch, thank you very much. All of you who have been here, thank you for coming. An extraordinary presentation. I wish we had more time, but you got students to see, and that's very important.
Yes,
So-
you saw the students that I celebrated. I enjoy students. So thank you so much for arranging this. And thank you so much for patiently listening to me. If you got a headache, because my students apparently do when they come to my classes. So I'm sorry I don't have aspirins for you, but I hope you will find some in your, back home. So thank you very much for listening to me. And
Thank you all for coming.